Hey everybody, good evening. This is Greg DeTulio live in Jacksonville, living in Jacksonville channels, Thursday night, 8 o'clock, and I am grateful, super grateful, with lots of gratitude to be able to log on tonight and join you all on our show. No irony, we're talking about hurricanes here in Northeast Florida, and as I put out in my newsletter this week, if I wasn't coming on tonight and it was going to be recorded, it's because we lost power. But we didn't lose power by the grace of God. Our area was really not affected much here in Northeast Florida, specifically in St. Johns County, Nocatee area. And so because of that, we're blessed to have had a normal day to day with power and get back to work and whatnot, even though the kids were out of school. So tonight we're going to be talking about hurricanes in this area, preparation. My heart goes out to all the folks that have been affected by the last two storms. It has been a very impactful, busy hurricane season, super stressful, and a lot of destruction and lives affected, specifically near in the Carolinas and the Blue Ridge Mountains. We were also blessed there. I have a mountain house in Blue Ridge, Georgia, in the northwest section, and it veered east and actually went towards Asheville, and it's horrible what happened in those areas in the mountains. So, and again, we've had another one here yesterday, and we're just trying to find out the effects of Hurricane Milton that hit the west coast of Florida. I'm not going to be alone tonight. I'm actually going to have another guest back on tonight. Someone who's become a good friend and a local here in Nocatee. You've seen him before. He is the owner of Golf Cart World here in the St. Augustine, St. Johns County region. Hey, Chris, your volume's off, buddy. You got to put the volume on. Your microphone's off.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
How is everyone?
Oh, I think we're good, man. We have power. We didn't get affected by the storm.
Okay.
No water damage. So super blessed. How about yourself?
Same. I mean, we prepped. We prepped. Ahead of time earlier in the week, but this St. John's area. I mean, a lot of people I talk to that have been here for a long time, they tell me we don't really get hit by storms. I mean, you've been here longer than I have.
Mm-hmm.
I think this area gets saved a lot of times.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight, Chris, for sure. It's really nice to have someone who's fresh to the area to experience it, to have your perspective, because first of all, a lot of folks that are building here right now with me are not in town. I mean, first of all, I want to say thanks to everybody who reached out. Man, I got a barrage of text messages yesterday, last night, this morning from everybody. Much love to all of y'all that are thinking about us and thinking about me to send me a text to make sure we're okay. We sincerely, truly appreciate that. But the media is Florida, 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 hurricanes, hurricanes, hurricanes. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight, Chris. I've done a lot of research. I've done 3 videos on hurricanes, which I'll put in the show links tonight, because I did some pretty in-depth studies of why I moved here from the area, because I was living in South Florida, which is very heavily hurricane prone. But I'm going to show a study that was done by an insurance company that shows the most hurricane prone areas. And we fortunately are not as susceptible to direct hits of hurricanes, but we are susceptible to flooding in the coastal areas. And we'll get into that. But before I get into all of that, for those of you that are logging on, welcome to the show. Let us know where you're watching from, and if you were in the storm by any means, had any effects, whatever. I'd love to hear in the comments if you had any effects, where exactly were you located, or where are you living that you had any effect, whatever. Please be a part of this. This is interactive. We'd love to hear from you where you're watching from. By all means, please do add that in the comments. This is interactive, and we'd love to hear from you. And then again, really quick, I also just want to put my heart out there to all the families affected by Milton and then Helene. We've seen that. I think we've had a death toll here in Florida. I think they're confirming at least 12 deaths from last night's hurricane across the state of Florida. I don't know if some of that was the effects of the tornado that hit Wellington, which was kind of a freak thing. If you ask me, the hurricane spurred a couple tornadoes down in the Wellington area, southeast region of Florida, which was really odd. So some massive damage there. And then, of course, the storm hit off the coast of Siesta Key in Sarasota. So my heart goes out to all those affected people that are submerged underwater right now. And then, of course, naturally, as I said last week's video, my heart genuinely goes out to all the people in the mountains that would have never expected in a million years for a storm and a hurricane to affect the mountain areas like they did, specifically the Asheville area. So God bless all of you, and for all the people that are out there helping. And you know, I know I have my sister-in-law in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her and her kids have gone out to the mountain area to help out. This is the time where not only like, because everybody had the day off, kids are off to school today, tomorrow, and Friday. They not only is it like a family time to appreciate time together, kind of like how COVID was, but also it's an opportunity. If you've ever been thinking in your heart, in your mind, hey, I want to do something good for somebody else. Man, this is the time to do it, dude. I've volunteered in so many hurricane relief projects down in the Keys with Samaritan Purse, all over Florida. Actually, I did tornadoes in Orlando, helping people, Central Florida, with roofing. This is a really a big time, not only just to donate money and clothing and stuff that people need, but also to just get out there with them and spend time with them in their, you know, in the muck that's left behind from these storms, the flooding, the loss of all the personal articles, the morale is down. Just to interact with them, get dirty with them, and help them clean up, and then really just be a listening ear and just try to empathize as best as you can with them. You don't understand how much people appreciate that and how it lifts their morale, because when you see a group of people, like, I think Samaritan's Purse is one of the most amazing response teams I've ever seen. Even my friends, I'm originally from the Caribbean island of St. Martin, and we're used to hurricanes like crazy, but Irma destroyed St. Martin a few years ago, including my brother's house. And people said that Samaritan's Purse was one of the first organizations to land on the island and get tarps over roofs, give them tarps, what they needed most, because the rain kept coming and they needed to you know, the damaged roofing. And believe it or not, I mean, this is a Christian organization, Chris, but my friends who are talking about this group called Samaritan's Purse, never been to church a day in their life. And like, man, those people were for real. So,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's like the opportunity to really, doesn't matter what organization, but to get out there and help folks. Now we have it in different parts of Florida, specifically in the West Coast. And then obviously Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and the mountains as well. So if you have that opportunity, definitely, I would highly recommend taking your kids out there and maybe seeing who you can go out and help out there. It'll be the best experience you ever had. So for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I tell everyone with these hurricanes, and you know, we moved from, you know, Texas originally here, so it was, you know, Tornado Alley over there. But I tell everyone, it's, you know, I don't care what your religion, your race, your creed, it doesn't matter what you are. Be a neighbor, be an American. Help out. Someone needs a hand, help them out. They'll be so thankful, just because in that time of need, they really need us to be, you know, part of your, you know, part of a community, even part of their community, even if it's not your community, even if it's 100 miles or 50 miles or 200 miles away. The help is definitely needed. I can tell you that because I've spoken to a lot of people in the Carolinas, some friends that have been affected. And they said, you know, anything you can do. So.
Yeah, for sure. And also remember that this takes months to recover. So I think the most important time for sure is they're just trying to assess everything now. So if you get frustrated with whatever organization you're trying to volunteer with and they're not responding to you yet, please understand that every time I volunteered with Samaritan's Purse, they're just getting their people there to assess the damage. They have people that are professionals that are trying to figure out what the assessed damage is, what the plan of action is, and then they bring in organized volunteers to help and the resources. So if you're not, if you do not feel like these organizations are responding to you right away, give it time, because the real cleanup and the real moral support is about a month from now, when we all go back to work and all go back to school and we forget about all those people that their lives are going to take the next 6 months to recover from these
Right.
storms. So keep that in mind. If it's not now, Thanksgiving, whenever, those are your opportunities to do something completely different and change not only somebody else's life, but your life personally. Because every time I did it, I came away with that going, man, I didn't do anything for anyone. They did so much for me, making me realize how blessed I am. Because when you see it in person, anyone I've known, my brother's done it, a lot of friends, anyone I've known who's gone to some of these disaster areas and they see it with their own eyes, it is unreal of how powerful Mother Nature is, which leads me into the next segue. You know, people that are from here, we haven't had any direct hit hurricanes in Jacksonville or the Northeast area since Hurricane Dora, which was in this, I think it's Dora, which was in the 60s, right?
Wow.
And so naturally, when you've been in an area so long where you've had no direct hit hurricanes, it's very easy to be complacent and comfortable and go, oh, okay, no big deal. But the reality is, I personally, like from a responsibility standpoint, specifically being in real estate and having a lot of newer folks like yourself, Chris, that are from the Northeast, Texas, and you haven't dealt per se with hurricanes. I'm a little bit more responsible when people ask, hey, Greg, should I evacuate? And I say to people, you know what? If there's a storm out there as large as, this last one, Milton, appeared, right? I mean, it literally engulfed half the state of Florida if you were looking at the maps. And it can go north, it can go south. This time it went a little south. All it needs to do is change track, and it will always at the last minute, you notice. And so I can't be responsible for saying, hey guys, I think you're going to be fine. The truth is, when I moved here 7 years ago, we left for the first hurricane. But you have to realize that what preparation means is that you're not leaving at the last minute. Okay.
Right.
There have been multiple storms, because I lived in South Florida, where it was coming towards us in South Florida. So everybody on the southeast section of Florida, so everybody drove over to Naples on the West Coast. Well, guess what? It started shifting towards the West Coast. Then everybody started driving north. And the traffic was ridiculous. I mean, I heard some folks were on the road for 17, 18 hours because they waited to the last minute. And I can be kind of guilty of that too, where you're sitting there with your two, my girls were little babies back then, and you're sitting there going, should we leave? Should we leave? Am I being irresponsible? All these things go through your mind, and then you decide to jump in a car last minute because you're not prepared. Now, I don't know what you did for preparation, but naturally it's the canned foods, lots of water. I get gas for my generator, so I can at least get my generator running to get the freezers and the fridges back up if we lose electricity. Just all the general things that naturally you should think of,
Yeah.
and then you go to the grocery stores and people are just loaded up with beer and wine.
Yeah. So, talking about preparation. So every house that we lived in, um, and the first storm that we really got affected with was, and we were in New Jersey at the time, was Sandy. I don't know if you remember Superstorm Sandy, but Sandy pretty much decimated the whole New Jersey coast. And we lived in a coastal town. Um, but the first time that we lost power, I went to my electrician, and this is something that you know your buyers should actually ask to have installed or have installed after. But I had a um, transfer switch set up with a plug. Now, I'm not talking the big Generac system that's 5, 6, 7,000. I'm talking transfer switch. They mount it to the outside of your house or underneath your lanai, your back porch. You roll your generator out, depending on how many appliances you want to run. And us here, we just want to be able to run our lights and our refrigerators. That's really all we need. And we plug in, we start our generator up. I would recommend a dual gas generator, one that runs off of propane and gas. That way, if gas is low, well, guess what? You have propane. Get a couple propane tanks. So I made sure we had 2 propane tanks. I started our generator prior to the storm. I plugged it in. I ran the circuits that we wanted to run. My system, between the generator, between the transfer switch, between the electrician, I probably spent under $2,000 for everything.
Yeah.
But it's nice because that way, if you do lose power, you don't lose your perishable foods. You don't lose your refrigerators. Those generators run for 18 hours. You technically, as well as this, because you lived in that area, you don't have to run them for 18 hours. You can run them for, you could run it for 12, 14, 15 hours, go to sleep, shut everything down when you go to bed at night. You don't need to run it overnight. So we did that. We had water on hand. We cooked some things so that we didn't have to worry about. We made sure that our grill worked. If you don't have an outdoor grill, get a propane grill, get a natural gas grill, get something. And then we just kept watching the weather reports. Do we leave or do we stay? And I think that's the tricky question, right? I mean, like you said, I this area, most people I know that live here, they'll say the same thing. And we haven't seen any major effects in who knows how long. I mean, St. Augustine's oldest city in the country, right? I mean, it's still there. It's still there. I mean, some original buildings are still there. So that tells me, historically that, this is a good area, but you're right. Don't rest your morals on saying, hey, it's nothing else is going to happen, because it could. Charge all your stuff up. We charged everything up. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, we had all our phones charged that night. We had all our our flashlights charged up that night. As crazy as it sounds, we had our golf cart charged up that night. And the reason I had the golf cart charged up is because we have USB ports. We could always plug into it if we needed to get power out of it. We just made sure, and then we made sure everything was cleared out of the yard and out of the lanai, out of the back, just for high winds. But I think I think this is one of the areas that we really are blessed. And I don't know if it's because of the St. Johns River, where the St. Johns River connects, and where we lie, and the inlets that go into St. Augustine. I'm not sure what it is. I sell golf carts. I'm by no means a scientist.
No. So, I mean, I've been here 7 years now, and we had one storm back then. It might have been Irma. And Irma caused the most damage in this area, and it was mostly flooding. And we did lose power, if I recall, and we lost power for a few days. But when you think about it, it was just trees, man. I mean, all our lines, we're in Nocatee, so we have all underground lines and whatnot. But we lost power for a few days. That's the only time I've ever used our generator here in 7 years. And Chris, I love how you just mentioned all those things. I mean, that's called preparation, folks. Having that switch on your panel where you can plug your just an independent small generator to that and run your refrigerators and a few appliances. You can also charge your phone on the generator. You don't need a $10,000 or $14,000 Generac system.
Correct.
You can easily, for a grand, be more prepared. I love the idea of also being able to use propane. That's all we ever did when we lived in the islands is we had our generators running part of the day. We had our propane tanks to grill, boil water or whatnot. But yeah, in 7 years, we have only had one occasion where we lost power. So I think it's the geography of the way Jacksonville sits. We're kind of like Northeast Florida is kind of like a mini armpit, if you will. And usually the storms will go just south of St. Augustine and bank up towards the Carolinas. And
Yep.
so we're super blessed like that. The last three storms that I saw that I looked online was Hurricane Matthew in 2016, again, causing flooding to St. Augustine. That's why I always tell folks that are saying, hey, where do we want to live? You know, do we want to be near St. Augustine or not? And I always say to folks, yeah, St. Augustine is great. It's a historic city, but man, they have some massive flooding down in the
Oh
near
yeah.
the downtown area. And
Yep.
then the same thing with Hurricane Irma. I know that it caused massive flooding in St. Augustine. It caused massive flooding in downtown St. Augustine. All along the St. Johns River, you're going to get massive flooding. So all the coastal areas, you really have to think about those areas where you're going to be affected by flooding. And then, of course, like what they're going through in Tampa right now is storm surges, right?
Yep.
That is the massive effects from these storms. Really, is heavily on the flooding of these areas. So, what you should be doing every time when you're thinking about purchasing. Did you think about that at all, though, Chris, when you were picking Nocatee to come and move from Texas? Did you even consider like, well, I know Northeast Florida is not as prone to hurricanes. Did it cross your mind?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the big factors. So some of our neighbors, so the master plan community that we lived in Texas, some of our neighbors moved down to 30A, that area.
That's on the
Uh,
Gulf Coast of Florida. It's called the Redneck Riviera of the Gulf
yes,
Coast. Beautiful
exactly.
beaches, gorgeous. Yeah.
Pensacola area, like down towards there, beautiful beaches.
Destin. Yeah.
In white sand, gorgeous. But when I looked at it and I'm looking at all the storms that hit it, I go, you know something? That's a vacation home. That's not a permanent family home where I want to have my kids and my wife and my family. Um, a vacation home, yes, but I don't want to live there. So the northeast Florida was a huge factor. The other factor is that I did my homework on Nocatee. And what most people don't realize about Nocatee is, when you live in Nocatee and you live in a master plan community as such, your HOA. So they really help keep the not only your yards and everything in place, but the preserve that's behind your yard if you're lucky enough to have one. So we ran into a couple of areas behind ours because ours is new. We called our management company and said, hey, there's probably 15 dead trees that they're going to come down in the storm. Actually, one of my neighbors had one come down in the storm and collapsed into his pool. But the BCM, they came out. They had a gentleman come out, drop all these dead trees, make sure that nothing was going to fall in the houses. I mean, that's when you move to Nocatee and you move to a community, a master plan community like this, those are some of the perks that people don't realize. They literally help you take care of your yard. Um,
Yes, so BCM, so for those you don't know, that's one of the main, that's one of the independent property management companies in town that are pretty well known that come out. Also, if you have a tree that's gone down in the preserve areas, which is not technically your land, and you need it removed, I believe you can also call your CDD, the Talamato District, has
yep.
also people that will come and cut those trees down if there's any danger. Our neighbor had a tree that was struck by lightning. It was coming down. They came and cut it down for them, and no charge, I don't think either.
No,
So
there's
yeah,
no charge. They're
yeah,
absolutely because St. John's controls that preserve, right? If it's a dead tree, they do want to remove it. They do want to get it out of there. They don't want to leave it up to have a problem. Um, So yeah, I mean, we were blessed enough to have a bunch of trees removed before this storm came in. And you know, we live in, as I said, when living in Nocatee, this is one of the perks.
Yeah,
And I'm sure some of the other master plan communities locally have the same type of perks. Um, you know, where they have their management company or something in their association to help with the forest that's behind their house.
yeah,
I think that's amazing.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, you're paying for it indirectly either through your CDD or your property taxes of St. John's. And then another thing I might add too is that you know I always joke about it because people always go, well, you know, do you want a preserve or a lakefront? These are not technically lakes.
yeah,
You know, these are ponds, retention ponds that are created and designed specifically for when things like this happen, that the water is able to not flood in one area. So they're actually super beneficial. They're required. The developers are required to put them in. The county does planning on all. Everything is planned on these retention ponds, and that's why we're not seeing massive flooding in Nocatee. The thing is that people need to understand is that this is all by design. And so when people ask me, well, has there been flooding there? And I said, well, there's two things that we always talk about that people have been here since the beginning of time, because this development has been here, actually has been planned since early 2000s, so 20 years. They said there's two things that haven't happened yet, knock on wood, is we haven't had any major floods here that we know about, and we've never had any alligator attacks.
yeah.
I just had
It's
to throw
true.
that in there because I still
Yeah.
get people from Oregon or California or New York going, I heard you have alligators. Yes, we do.
Yep.
So should I be worried about them?
No,
20 years.
they're deathly scared of us. If you know, people don't realize when you move down here and there's a gator on the side of a pond. If you walk up on him, he's jumping in the water. He thinks that you're the predator, not him. You know,
Yeah.
they're getting out of there.
Now, naturally, I'm always cautious with my 17-pound dog Paisley because you never
Oh yeah.
know. You know, you just use a little bit of sensibility. But no, we have not had any attacks. Now because we talked about this, now we have to worry about the chances of somebody getting attacked. I'm going to feel really bad about this. But
Yeah.
the point being is you don't, you know, be smart about it in your
Yep.
environment. But we have not had any alligator attacks, and we have never had any major flooding in Nocatee, which is pretty amazing considering this area is, you know, certain parts of Nocatee is only 5 miles from the beach. We actually have certain neighborhoods that are on the water. People have asked me what would be your most concerning areas, and I would say obviously the homes that are on the intercoastal, like River Landing, the high-end properties, because that's literally. But keep in mind, on our end, on our side of the intercoastal, on the other side where Roscoe is, we're actually higher above sea level here in Nocatee than they are on that side. So they're
Yep.
more susceptible to flooding than we are because we're above sea level on our side. So it's really interesting that you understand the geography as well. Plus all the land here, this was swampland. They raised all the land and graded it up so that we are in an X zone, which means we're not required in most areas here to have flood insurance. Now, for the love of God, for the $400-500 it costs a year, I recommend getting flood insurance.
Exactly.
It's worth the $400-500 a year just not to have that any worry at all. But again, in the state of Florida, we have some of the cheapest insurance, home insurance in the state of Florida. And we're only 5, 6, 7 miles from the beach, which is pretty incredible for a coastal town. So I'm in a 3,300 square foot house, fully insured to the hilt with flood insurance, and I'm paying $2,400 a year.
Yep.
I was in a
So
2,600 square foot house in South Florida, and it was 4,600 7 years ago. Now I understand it's like 9,000 a year.
so when we were in Texas, our insurance in Texas was about 6,800 for a 3,600 square foot home. Um, and that was with it was like a 10% deductible on your roof. So if your roof got torn off by a tornado, there was a 10% deductible. It was like ridiculous. You would have to pay like 5 grand. It was crazy. When we moved here and they said, hey, by the way, your insurance for the year is a 3,000 square foot home, your insurance is 1680, 1700, and then your flood insurance is another 500, because technically you're still in a flood zone. I said, yeah, that's fine. So we were just rated and changed out of a flood zone. And my insurance agent and I had a conversation about this. He goes, Chris, does the 500 really change your life per year? And I go, no, not at all. He goes, let's just leave the insurance. He goes, he goes, I would hate to see you, not have it and have something happen, than need it and not have it. So,
Yeah.
We left it. I mean, and I was happy because neighbors were like, hey, I just dropped my flood insurance. Should I be worried? I'm like, just leave it. Call your insurance agent back up. It's going to take 30 days now, for it to be reinstated. But yeah, get it back on. I mean, it's just,
You're going to
you're
save
right.
$41 a month by getting rid of your flood insurance. $41 a month. Is it worth it to have peace of mind?
Nope. Listen, 3 kids and a wife. I go to Dunkin' Donuts. I spend $41 in one drive-through.
Yeah, it doesn't make
So,
sense. I tell people all the time. I mean, so you were in a flood zone AE, and then you got moved up to an X after a year,
yeah,
if I know correctly. And that's
correct.
pretty much what we have here in Nocatee. I'm going to really acknowledge this here, right here. Jax 904, Jacksonville, Florida, West Side. Glad it wasn't too bad here. Glad to hear that, man. That is awesome to know that you guys weren't affected on the west side. I appreciate you joining us tonight, for sure. Glad to hear it wasn't bad over there as well. If anybody was in Jacksonville or St. Augustine, it was bad, I would love to hear what your experience was. I definitely saw Anastasia Island down in St. Augustine was really bad. Chris, your shop, Golf Cart World, is down closer to St. Augustine.
It is.
Were you affected at all down there at all?
No, we're up on Phillips Highway, US 1. It's a newer building, so same type of thing. They graded it up. It's, we're more on the high side of the highway. So we weren't. I mean, winds, yes, but that's the nice thing about, some of this new construction. It's hurricane. They build it to take a withstanding of certain hurricane winds. Because the state, in St. John's, they require that, rightfully so. So no, we weren't affected, thankfully. Thank God, because I have a lot of inventory, and it's insured.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like you said, it's when you are affected by this, whether it's your home or your business or a relative or a friend, it's painstaking. It's weeks, months. It could take a year sometimes to recover.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, thankfully we weren't. I was at the store today. Had the doors open. Had some people talking to me coming in. Talking about golf carts, and just electric cars and cars in general. I can tell you this: if your car has ever been even slightly submerged in water, let's just say up to the door, like up to the bottom of the door jamb. Me coming from the automotive world, don't get in it. Don't get in it. Don't try to start it. It could turn into a bigger problem than you could imagine. A lot of the computers for these cars and stuff are in the floorboards. And when they get soaked with water, airbags can go off. You could destroy electronics in the car. You're almost better off just getting the car towed out of that spot and letting it dry out, or just call your insurance company, because they'll probably total it out for you.
Yeah, I'm kind of freaked out a little bit, Chris, because I'm a big Tesla fan. I'm a battery operated vehicle,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm not hearing wonderful things about water and batteries.
No, so with lithium ion, with lithium and salt water don't like each other. Like they really don't like each other. But to Tesla's point and a bunch of the other manufacturers, they usually do seal those batteries So they submerge those batteries, or at least I know Mercedes does. They submerge their battery all the way down into a water to make sure that there is no air getting into the lithium. But that doesn't mean it couldn't fail. It absolutely could fail. So just be cautious. I mean, Governor DeSantis he had a couple of amazing points that he made today. Don't go in any standing water. Stay away from power lines. If there's a branch or something and you're not equipped to really remove that branch or clean that branch, just leave it. Let a crew come out and do it, because who knows if it's touching a power line? Who knows if it's in the water? It's a lot of the deaths that you hear about storms are post. It's not even during. Like you don't hear the news talk about the post death or the post issues of someone getting hurt after a storm.
Yeah.
And listen, that personally happened to me. There was a branch hanging on a power line, a top power line. I figured, I'll just pop it off. And, I popped it off with my hand. And I'll tell you, it shocked me. It didn't
Yeah.
feel good. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and electricity travels through water, so even if it's nearby, I mean, you see it down line, stay out of Dodge. I always tell people, I mean, if there's trees down and there's water buildup, unless you have any reason to be out and about, there's no reason for it at all. And you're 100% right. It's always people that are getting injured that are trying to be a hero out in the storm, out of curiosity, or somebody that's coming out during a storm or after the storm. You're 100% right about that. Going back to our previous conversation regarding flood insurance, first off, if you're getting a home and you're moving to Florida, you go to the FEMA.gov page that I'm on here. And right here, you can just press on Know Your Risk, and you should be able to pull up the flood map. And then at that point, whatever home that you're actually considering, you should go ahead and put that address in here. And like I'll just do our zip code, for instance, just to educate a little bit people, because some people never lived in Florida and they don't know. And you should be able to see here, if you hone in on a flood map, FEMA will have a rating. And if you see here's zone AE, that's what Chris was talking about. That's one level under X. So X is a flood zone where you're not required to have flood insurance, and AE is one level below that. And so this is the Nocatee area, and as you can see, you'll see specifically where the flood zones are and what you should be considering. And then secondly, besides doing this, a good real estate professional should put you in touch with an insurance agent, and you should know from the insurance agent without a doubt they're not going to give you insurance if you're in a high liability area. It's going to cost an arm and a leg. So make sure that you always get your insurance quote before you even get into contract. Be smart about it. So these resources are available to you. And my insurance agent over at Brightway, she has no problem doing quotes for anybody, whether you buy a policy from them or not. And then you should always try to get a couple policies. Right now, we're seeing a lot of people with either State Farm or a local broker like Brightway, but it changes every year. We haven't gotten kicked out of Progressive, but a lot of Florida insurance companies have been leaving Florida in general. The other thing I want to show here, and I did a video on this separately, and I think this is very interesting. You might find this interesting, Chris, is no better person to ask about the liabilities than insurance companies, because insurance companies are not going to do cheap coverage in areas that are high risk. They do more research than anybody else, any other organization. So I found this article from Universal Property Casualty Insurance Company, and they were talking about the most hurricane-prone areas in Florida. And number one on the list, and again, this is not completely updated, but it's still on pretty viable. Northwest Florida on the Panhandle has had 66 total hurricanes. 14 of them were category 3 through 5. Okay. So obviously, for people that are not well versed in this, the category of the storm is based on how strong the winds are. So anything 3 and above is bad. Okay. 3 is bad, 4 is catastrophic, and 5 is like historically catastrophic. So the reason why the Northwest Panhandle is so prone to hurricanes is because the Gulf Coast has lots of warm water. And so warm water is what feeds these storms. So when they come through the Gulf and they continue north, they gain more and more power as they're over the Gulf Coast and gathering higher strength in the speeds of the wind until they make landfall. So this last storm, okay, it was a category 5 when it was looming in on Tampa, right? And then when it hit landfall, it actually turned to a category 3 because it's getting less of that warm water feeding the storm. So again, historically, the Panhandle and the Gulf Coast has been the most hurricane prone in the state of Florida. Number two is Southwest Florida. And let me just get into exactly the Northwest area, what that includes. On the Panhandle, most hurricane prone area, shallow waters and warm waters. Let's see, what areas do they tell you exactly? So Northwest is exactly where you were talking about, Chris.
Yep.
You're talking about Destin, and if you recall, Mexico Beach on the Panhandle in that area, on the way to that area, was also massively struck by a hurricane a few years ago. Then the next big liable place is Southwest Florida, 49 hurricanes, 17 that were category 3 through 5. And so we're talking about areas like I would say Naples, Fort Myers, all those areas. And again, I don't need to tell you that that's where the last few storms have been hitting, from Fort Myers up Sarasota, where this
Yep.
last one hit off Siesta Key. Then on the third highest is Southeast Florida, where I used to live in the Boca Raton, Fort Lauderdale area. 49 total hurricanes, 16 that were category 3 through 5. And again, that's Miami up. And if I recall, as a kid, Hurricane Andrew was a category 5, one of the worst hurricanes in South Florida history. So I would say there all the way up to the Palm Beaches, Fort Myers, even Vero Beach, if you will. And then the least hurricane prone areas in Florida is Northeast Florida. And we've
Yep.
had 26 total hurricanes, including only one that was category 3. And that covers our whole area. So on average, Northeast Florida gets hit by a hurricane every 6.5 years, compared to Northwest counterpart, which averages a hit one every 3 years.
Wow.
So it's dramatic, man, that this area, you ask, why are we, we're just, because we have cooler waters. We're in that little armpit area of geography. And so we're least framed. But now, of course, they're saying inland Florida, closer to North Florida. And they say inland because, again, you've just witnessed this hurricane went straight across from Siesta Key towards Orlando and then came out the East Coast. So now we're seeing Central Florida certainly is prone to hurricanes as well, more so flooding than anything. I know a few friends in Orlando that dealt with a lot of flooding. If anybody's watching from Orlando and you had flooding, I'd love to know how bad it was down there. But I think the northern areas, northern Central Florida, west of us, are probably the areas that are least likely. Now, do these rules still apply anymore? I mean, we watch one come right through there, Tallahassee, and go, Helene went all the way up through the Georgia mountains. Again, I think that was more related to rain that had occurred before the storm had come. It had been raining for a couple of weeks in the mountains before then, and then you add a hurricane that just sits over there and dumps more rain. I think that was, again, some of the major effect of that storm. But pretty interesting information. And these are the kind of studies by insurance companies, is why where our insurance, yours being 1,600 plus 500, 2,100 a year with flood insurance, and mine's 2,400 a year. If you go ahead and get insurance quotes for other areas in Florida, the same type of home near the beach like us, where we're living, a similar home, Chris, would be about more like $7,000 to
Oh,
$15,000 a year.
hands down, hands down. You
Yeah.
know what? We really do live in it's a Northeast Florida is a hidden gem, or at least it used to be, right? People are realizing that this is the spot. This area, whether it's Nocatee, whether it's St. Johns County, like St. Johns County, even parts of Duval. This is where people, whether it's from the Midwest, Chicago, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, you name it. They're doing their homework. The people that move here, they like myself. I mean, we loved Texas, but our property taxes were, 2.21. You're paying 16, 17,000 in property taxes. You're paying 6,000 in homeowners insurance. When you start to add it up, and then you come here and you go, wait. So we have the beach. We have inexpensive insurance. We have relatively inexpensive property taxes, great schools, master plan communities that are new, that are built up. We're 30 minutes, 40 minutes from Jacksonville Airport, which I love, by the way, to fly in and out of. It's so easy. I mean, it's just, you put it all together, and then add in how many hurricanes have really directly hit us. This is really an ideal spot. I can only see it becoming um, uh, more. I hate to say it, but more populated, because people are, even a lot of my neighbors. They moved up like you. They moved up from Central and South Florida. They're like, oh yeah, we knew we wanted to move here. It was just a matter of time. So I mean, even other Floridians are moving to this area, and that speaks volumes.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but I'm already getting calls from lots of Floridians. Some good clients have become friends now, and I know some of them are watching tonight. They know who they are, that are coming from Southeast Florida, Southwest Florida. I had people that are moving in this week that came from the Northwest Panhandle area, which you mentioned as well, and
Yep.
and for the exact reasons that you're mentioning, because of the cost of living. And I'm afraid that after all these storms, especially Fort Myers, people are going to get, Naples and all those people are going to get fed up with these storms, and they're going to go, look, I'm not ready to leave Florida. I still want to be close to the beach. Where is it that I can move to? So I really think, again, this area is going to continue to grow. People can talk about interest rates and, oh, the economy and all that, but it really, if anything, Chris, it's just been a normal market for us now. This year I've had a breakout year from last year, and the truth is, people ask me, well, is it going to crash? And I'm like, guys, if you
I
look
don't
at
think
this
so.
map, of what's going on in these other parts of Florida, it's people are fed up being on the west coast of Florida. It is absolutely beautiful. We love Longboat Key, but I mean, how many times are you going to have to be worried about, the downtown area of Tampa, or the downtown area of Sarasota, or the downtown area of Fort Myers, or the coastal areas, the places you love, getting completely washed away, and then trying to deal with the cost of living and insurance. But again, remember, some of the big effects from these storms are not just the actual winds and the damage from the hurricane, but the storm surges. If you look at this came in through Sarasota, but look at the rainfall that came through
Oh yeah.
here in Tampa, in the barrier islands here, all the way across. I mean, 10, 12 inches. Orlando was soaked in
Oh
in,
yeah.
in flooding. If you look here at the map outside of Orlando, this whole area. So it's really incredible. And then of course, just south of Jacksonville, up in this area, this is where St. Augustine takes a beating every single time. Is
Yep.
these the rainfall and the storm surges? They can't deal with it. They just don't have the infrastructure or the drainage to deal with it. But I mean, look at this. I mean, we're talking 8 to 10 inches of rain, and then we get up to Jacksonville, and here we are, In our area, 2 to 4 inches. That's a drastic difference from 4 inches to 12 inches. You know what I mean? It's a big difference. So
I also think that Jacksonville, between what's going on with the Jaguars, the stadium, they have the hospital there. Jacksonville, even though the city's has been there, I think it's starting to revitalize itself. And the reason I mention that is because I have friends that live down in Boca Raton, all down the East Coast, and they live in these high rises. And I guess a few years ago, that one high rise that killed all those people, it collapsed, right, because of the pool, because of
in
the
North Miami
inspections.
Beach, yep,
Yes. So
concrete.
yeah, so now what's happening is these buildings have been there since the 60s and 70s, and they need a lot of work. So their HOAs, their assessments that they're doing, they're laying out huge amounts of money, where Jacksonville area is kind of new. These buildings are new.
Yeah.
They're your assessment is your assessment. It's not going to change dramatically. So I can see a lot of people from the Orlando, from the Boca Raton area, from that, area saying, let's just move to a newer area with newer buildings that we don't have to worry about this.
Yeah, well, that was the allure for us too. I mean, Chris, we were in a 1970s home in Boca Raton when we moved up here 7 years. We thought we were in our dream home, and 1970s home, and we come up here and we're like, wow, you can get 3,000 square feet. Now, of course, it was a lot cheaper than it is now, but it's still cheaper up here compared to down there. We had 3 million people without power from this storm. This map again shows the areas. Of course, as you can see here, a lot of Sarasota, Tampa, west of Sarasota, a lot of people out of power here. I think Hastings, south in St. Augustine area, west of St. Augustine, I think we had a lot of flooding and a lot of power outages south of us, Crescent Beach, all that. If anybody's watching from those areas, let us know how you're being affected by that. But if you can look here, Southeast Florida was the least affected, but mostly all of central, the West Coast was pretty heavily affected without power as well. And hopefully those people will regain power as well here soon. But pretty incredible, a category 3 by the time it hit land. And still that many people out of power and that much destruction and floods going on. The other big news is that there was a lot of tornadoes that were spun off from this hurricane, and I had a lot of friends being in South Florida were affected in the Wellington area and the Port St. Lucie area. So these are all popular areas that we compete with a lot. A lot of people are moving from South Florida north to Port St. Lucie area. This is crazy right here. These tornadoes that started hitting down here as well. So again, nothing up here in the northeast section of Jacksonville. We're just super blessed. And historically, in the 7 years I've been here, I've never felt unsafe during any of the storms being a local. And I didn't at all. I've been very humble about that. I didn't, give that impression to any of my new people, anybody that's moved here recently I sold homes to or was questioning. I did make fun of some of my friends from Texas that are good friends of mine. They were like, we're driving to Atlanta. And I was like, you're going to be stuck in traffic if you're leaving now.
Yeah.
But I mean, for most people, I was like, guys, this is a personal decision and you have to determine whether or not you want to be stressed by it. Our first year here, we were like, hey man, we're not used to wood frame homes. We're gonna go on a little short vacation for 3 days. We just don't want to deal with the drama.
Sure.
The kids are gonna be out of school. We actually went to Rosemary Beach that storm in 2017. I think it was Irma. But yeah, man, it's a personal decision. But at the end of the day, everybody's back at work tomorrow again here in our area.
Absolutely.
Yeah, back to the grind.
I have people that are like, can I get my golf cart tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, not a problem. everyone's back in the swing of things. I mean, even today, we really didn't get anything. It was very limited on what it was a little windy, it was a little rainy, but that was it. Everything else was done. It wasn't a big deal.
No, I honestly, I didn't even, this one wasn't really bad at all compared to the other ones. I can tell just from having to empty out my pool as well. But always be prepared. As we wrap
Okay.
up tonight, I think Chris made some very good points on if you're not from the area and you have a home here. I agree. You don't need to get a full, it may not be justifiable to get a full generator system for 10, 15 grand. You can just buy yourself a generator for 500 bucks. Get
Yeah.
that outlet put, that switch panel put so that you can run your refrigerators, have your barbecue with extra propane. That's all I did. I mean, I went and got some gas for my gas tanks to run the generator, a few propane tanks, water, canned foods, and
You make a list, like I have a little prep list. Number one, call my insurance company, make sure I'm paid, right? That's the number one. Make sure my insurance is paid. So I check to make sure my insurance is paid. I make sure my generator works. I make sure that we have some extra water. I pre-make some meals and grill some stuff so that we have it. And say a prayer to God that, hey, listen, have the storm go around us and save us, if possible. Um,
we all
and
took some we all took some hot showers last night too, as well. I'm not
Oh
gonna
yeah,
lie.
absolutely.
We all were like,
We're-
everybody take a nice hot shower. Yeah, all right, good.
Yeah, get
Yeah,
cleaned up. Make sure your laundry's done. Make sure your dishes are cleaned. Prep your house. Use the paper plates. Use the napkins. Like, just think smart. Because
yeah.
if in reality, let's just say you do lose power for a week. What are you getting rid of? You're getting rid of some paper plates and some paper towels, and yeah, you can hand wash some stuff if you need to. But yeah, just be prepared. You know, uh, Financially, meaning with your insurance, be prepared. Your home. Make sure
Get
your
some
home is
cash.
in
Get some
order.
cash out of your
Yeah,
ATMs.
make
You
sure
have a little
make
cash.
sure your truck or your cars are filled with gas. It's
Yeah,
just a small prep list. But
yeah.
like you said, we live in one of the best areas, hands down, in Florida. I moved from one of the best areas in Texas. I'll say it and I'll still say it. It was North Dallas. It's the best of the best when you come to Texas. There's not a better area. Um, but this is an amazing area with amazing people.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you joining me again tonight, Chris. Chris Minrell has always been a good buddy. He did our show. If you haven't watched, I'm going to put in the show notes about purchasing a golf cart here in Nocatee. We're a golf cart community. A lot of the CDD communities in St. Johns County, it's just the way we get around. It's green. It's fun. It's cheaper than driving around all the time. The kids love it. So Chris has blessed us with a really brand new, awesome showroom with some killer golf carts in Golf Cart World. So I will also put his information in there again as well. I didn't realize after show he goes to the same church as I do. We have mutual
Uh,
friends. I heard you're on the HOA too. Is
I
that?
am.
Yeah.
Yes, I am on
What
the
a good
HOA.
standing citizen you are, Chris. My
Yeah.
gosh.
Just try to give, don't ask for anything back. Just try to give and help as many people out as you can. And
You're
you
like the
know,
governor down there in Seabrook area.
yeah,
If you
that's all right. I
If
don't
you're
mind
down in
being
the
the
Seabrook
governor.
area, this guy right here, you'll see him out at the bus stop with the kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Dog
absolutely.
park, bus stop, pools. I mean, once again, we're blessed to live where we live. I don't think my kids really realize how good it is, but
No,
I
no,
remind them.
they have no clue anymore. After a year or two, you have to continually try to. Good luck trying to remind them, but
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. I hope you're safe. I hope you have family and friends and you're putting a helping hand out there. And of course, if you're thinking about moving the area or watching this from out of town, my name is Greg Catulli. I'd love to be your resource of choice. You can call me, text me, email me. My information will be in the description. And it's never too early to start having that conversation, understanding what the cost of living is here, what the opportunities are here, and of course, ensure a better life of safety, a little stress-free, especially in the Florida life, having to deal with these kind of storms. So until then, We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Chris, have a great night.
You too. Bye now.